Questions for Dwight?
I asked all my questions, I think, last week at Public Works Finance, so I think I'm good.
Okay.
I guess, well, not, my question is not for Dwight. My question is for the Public Works.
Well, I've got a
Finance.
question for
Yeah,
Dwight.
go ahead.
Do you? Okay, go ahead.
Dwight, I gather, then this would be the question, is the system broken now? The way you're doing it, you seem to be satisfied with the way you're doing it right now.
I'm very satisfied. It just gets back to the question of how, comfortable you are as policymakers, as the people that set budget, where you place this. And I'm perfectly comfortable wherever we go with it.
I think I'm more concerned if we start seeing signs of abuse of the program. And at this point in time, you haven't identified any abuse of it.
Correct. No blatant, anyway.
And you will continue to ask for donations for scholarships. I assume that the joint city Moscow Elks golf program, junior golf program, that's one of the camps that you're referring to. Okay.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm looking at, I think the whole idea back in December, and I'll ask my fellow council members, Walter, wasn't it because of the increased cost of the scholarships, we were looking at wanting a line item? Was that the idea behind it?
Walter?
Yes, the concern, as I remember it, and I know it was my concern, was the sharp increase of the overall cost. And a lot of what we're doing now is on paper and in reports. The fact that at some point in time, some council in the future should be fully informed the cost of this program, even though I think every council person I know every council person sitting here, and I would suspect every council person in the future would support such a program for the reasons Dwight has already said. But the discussion about changing the way that we're accounting for it to turn it into a real budget line item expense. And I took that further at Public Works Finance and talked about actually on the books paying Parks and Rec for the programs that are deemed to be scholarshiped. In other words, it would be internal money to the city, but they would have the revenue from it, and it would come from an expense item on the expense side of the budget. And so if this grows to a $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 operation somewhere down the road, the councils will feel the pain and make their own decisions about, do we continue, or has it gotten to a point where we need to put additional controls on it?
I think we're just getting in a discussion. That's fine. That's the answer that I wanted. So my question then would be, if we put a hard cost on the expense of the scholarships, and pick a number, say $15,000, if that's what goes in the budget, and we find that on the expense side, what percentage would you put on the income side for donations for scholarships?
Well, just off the cuff, I can't answer that.
50%?
Nah, probably around there. I'll just have to look back at the things that we've done in the past that seem there aren't very many absolutes on the revenue side. But
here's where I'm coming with this, and Gary, chop me off if I'm wrong here, but this is a situation where we don't exactly know how much is going to come in, and we don't know how much we're going to expend. I would have a concern that if we had an expense line item of saying we were going to do $15,000 worth of scholarships, and for some reason the income side was increasing, but we were quickly approaching that $15,000, and a budget's a budget, and we're locked into that, where they're able to keep it a little bit more fluid by not accounting for it. And I know this sounds strange coming from me, as much as I like to see numbers accounted for. But do we need that type of, I'll use the word fluidity, if you would like, on that particular program so that we can continue with this scholarship program?
And you were thinking about the distinction between, say, the example of the swimming activities that Dwight mentioned versus the camps that require
I'm just generally thinking of it overall.
individual staff. And I just mentioned, I think this came up because we saw, in excess of $18,000 expended this last year versus $11,000 the year before versus $7,000 the year before that. So it has grown in a, heart-pumping rate.
Exponentially.
Well, not almost, yeah. Let's see, Sue?
Yeah, I think the hard costs for the camps and that should definitely, be budgeted and as Walter says, paid to Parks and Rec, reimbursed for. But I do see the point that if one person went to the pool all summer, the pool had been set to be open so many days, so many people have been hired, they're going to change the chlorine in the water so many times, and that's going to happen whether 3 people come or 300. And that I don't really have a dog in the fight about whether it's government financing or cash basis financing or accrual or whatever and how you want to do that. But it does make it seem like if we're giving, okay, here's the pool, we're giving you $18,000 to run the pool, or, however much you're giving to run the pool. That's just to run the pool. That's not part of the scholarship program, is the way I see it. The thing that I do have an interest in is I've been poor and a single mother and kids, and I would never have even asked for, I didn't, if I couldn't afford it, I didn't go. I didn't even ask for scholarships. And to see people that are non-residents, even though it's only a few, getting big bucks, I'm going, man, I could round up all the kids I could find and send them in there to, from our town, that they didn't know they could. I really think that since it's the city's money going into it, I think it's the city's kids that should be able to use it.
Tom?
That's the one thing I wanted to raise the question about, was the restricting the scholarships to only City of Moscow residents. I think that's appropriate for the, I can see the argument for the tax dollars being restricted. But if we are funding this in part with donations that are, private donations coming to us, having that restriction in advance potentially takes away those donors that might be interested in providing funds for kids.
So you're thinking out of county,
Sure.
like somebody like Walmart gives for the whole county? Is that
Right.
what you're thinking?
Exactly. Walmart, they don't care if somebody lives in Moscow or Troy or whatever. In fact, they might be more excited to try to make Moscow the place in town, right? And get people coming in. Latah County Community Foundation, for example, is particularly interested in funding programs that serve people of need outside of the city limits. I can think of a few other examples of just individuals and groups of people that would be interested in providing funds as long as kids from outside of the city could participate as well. So I'm nervous about that piece of it having a dampening effect on raising private funds. So my preference would be to maybe reword that somewhat. So I'd like to have that be explored somewhere. So.
Okay. Wayne?
Well, I'm going to give a very solid example of exactly what Tom's talking about. The Moscow Elks Lodge made a donation of $500 to the youth scholarship program. The Moscow Elks Lodge doesn't just draw members from Moscow. It's Moscow, it's Pullman, Potlatch, Troy, Deary, Kendrick, Julietta. And if I suspect that what could happen, and where this junior golf program is one of the camps, and if suddenly it's only the scholarships available for residents of the city of Moscow, and these are the members of the Elks Lodge from the area that are making this donation, that donation may not happen. So it's what Tom's talking about. We would the Elks Lodge would not want to see somebody from Troy not being able to partake in that junior golf program.
Dwight?
I understand completely, and this is basically how we've been reporting this over the years. But as you'll recall, it was the city council that had a problem with the residency requirement, not the Parks and Rec Commission. And they're just acting on your direction. That's why this came about.
We're arguing amongst ourselves, not with you.
Okay.
Well, I
I
think
just
you've
wanted to make
convinced
that
me.
clear. And they argued this. I mean, they vetted it. But their direction was to come back with some kind of cost gap, cost recovery. They looked at co-pays. They looked at all kinds of things. And short of going back to their original recommendation, which seemed, to handle the program as it has, and that is no change to the program, then somebody's going to have to hurt. Co-pays are going to hurt somebody. The scholarship or the donation things, the grants, we would have to be up front with any potential grantee or grantor to tell them that it would be residents only, and could very well have a negative impact. I don't know that it's that abnormal to have that kind of requirement. It's been that way every place I've been before, but at the same time, they weren't small communities like this either. So anyway, that is a potential. You cannot have the statement, "We won't let any child go without," and have this discussion tonight. They don't mix. There either is no change to the program, or somebody's going to do without. That's the only two options that you have, and it's what options within those options you pick that are going to make the difference. Back to that thing that I said, it's a debate that just goes around and around and around, and it's whatever you're comfortable with. We're very comfortable with everybody, and being able to participate, and if it was a matter of just the budgeting where we cover it as has been requested, then that's what you're comfortable with, and we can make that work.
Okay. Thank you, Dwight. Looks like Gary has something to add.
So if I may ask Dwight a question.
Please.
The residency requirement, could that be Idaho residents?
It could be Idaho resident. It could be Latah County residents. They talked about that. It could be school district only. But the debate, it just
I
goes
understand
from
the debate.
Yeah.
The question I was just going to bring up is, if you look at the charts, there's been quite a bit of use specifically by certain folks in Whitman County. So that's a little bit different discussion than having Idaho residents. So maybe that's something that you would want to meet halfway even. I don't know.
Tom, when you were asking about that, it sounded like you were contemplating some hybrid form of this in terms of receiving funding that could help support out of city.
Yeah, and I was hoping the award-winning Don Palmer would be here so I could ask him the financial breakdown question, but we don't. So I don't know. I don't even know if that's even
Well, I can address
possible
that if you like.
thing.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be
If the
great.
question is, you take tax dollars and only support city residents with the tax portion, which is what I was getting from your comments, take the scholarship dollars or donations and apply those to everyone else, you're really asking staff to say, okay, we have this pot of money and this pot of money, and once this pot of money's gone, sorry, you guys are out, you guys are still in. I mean, you're really making an administrative nightmare out of it, which is what I think Dwight's saying in, make it standard. Whatever you choose, make it standard so they can apply it and budget it based on that.
If I could add just a little to that. What Gary's describing is exactly what we have already been doing, except when we got to the end of the money, we just kept going.
Yeah.
But we've already had it split out. We were accounting for them separately. And this past year, the only donation / grant dollars, or let me rephrase that. The only dollars that were resident only in that category was just the city's budget. Everything else was general. So, you know, if you went by what Tom and Wayne are talking about, I mean, you know, basically 100% of donation/grant was for everybody, not just residents.